Hello, Pedal. How you doing? How's it going? How have you been? I had all good intentions, as always, but I went to have my asthma review on Tuesday, and the sister, bless her, she turned around and she's like, "Oh, you haven't had your pneumonia jab. You were supposed to have that in 2015. I was like, "Yeah, kind of been avoiding it, really." She goes, "Well, I think you really need to get it done before the autumn comes in." I was like, she goes, "Well, you're going to have your other two next month." I was like, "Okay," because I've been avoiding it. Anyway, I had this this vaccine, and I was like, because obviously each to our own, and I think the most important thing is we all should be allowed to make our own decisions whether we do have them or not, but not have them forced onto us. That's all there is to it. And if people want to do it, let them be. If they don't want to do it, let them be. World be a better place. I digress. Rawr. But as far as it goes, I had my pneumonia vaccine and it knocked the ever-loving snot out of me. Oh my God. It's been, I'm only just beginning to feel a bit human today and I'm still wobbly. And I had it on Tuesday. So yes, that was interesting. That was interesting. Tell you what else I've been enjoying. I don't know if you've been enjoying this. But basically I've got Spotify like pretty much everybody has, I guess. And I've been listening to Jonathan Pye's Off the Record book. And my God, I love that guy. I watch his YouTube. And it's kind of like satirical commentary on like global affairs, and it's just so funny. I love his delivery. He's absolutely outstanding. So if you ever want to kind of like just have a giggle at somebody raging, then that's the way to go. But enough about all of this, because the first and foremost thing I really should ask, which I normally ask, is how are you? How are you doing, Pill? How's your week been? How have things been going? I do appreciate the comments as always, and it's nice to see them. And I know I've been wobbly, but we're getting back on track, slowly but surely. We're just like pulling that rope, that heavy rope, just pulling us up the freaking hill. We'll get there, because the rope's got knots in, makes it easier. Oh my goodness gracious. Right, so I didn't actually organise myself properly before I started today, so my apologies, because I've got my little tablet there and I haven't got my page open. That's not very clever, is it? Not even very professional, which is why we like this channel, because I'm not professional. As ever, my lovely beans, if you could like, share, subscribe, it just helps the channel. I don't mind if you just hit the notifications bell, or just let you know when I've got these little premieres coming out for yous. But yeah, see this voice, yeah, that's thanks to the honey, as always. Appreciate you, Aahz. And I seriously, I hope you're all well, and please let me know how you're doing. And yeah, little touch base. Yeah, and if I've missed anything, please shout me and go, "Hey, you've missed my communication. What the hell's going on with you?" So yeah, we'll catch up. Okay, let's get on with it, because I've been waffling too long as always. So, another fine myth by the wonderful Robert of Mr. Aspirin, chapter 17. See what I did there? See, I made it. Anyway. The wonders of the ages assemble for your edification, education, and enjoyment for a prize. P.T. Barnum. While I knew my home dimension wasn't particularly colourful, I never really considered it drab until I first set eyes on the bazaar at Diva. Even though both Aahz and Frumple and even the Imps had referred to this phenomenon, I had never actually sat back and tried to envision it. It was just as well. Anything I could have fantasized would have been dwarfed by the real thing. The bazaar seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, as far as the eye could see. Tents and lean-tos of all designs and colours were gathered in irregular clumps that shoved against each other for more room. There were thousands of Devilles everywhere, of every age and description, tall Devilles, fat Devilles, lame Devilles, bald Devilles, all moved about until the populace gave the appearance of being one seething mass with multiple heads and tails. There were other beings scattered through the crowd. Some of them looked like nightmares come to life. Others I didn't recognise as being alive until they moved. But they all made noise. The noise! Twixt had seemed noisy to me after my secluded life with Garkin, but the clamour that assailed my ears now defied all description. There were shrieks and dull explosions and strange burbling noises emanating from the depths of the booths around us, competing with the constant din of barter. It seemed no one spoke below a shout, whether weeping piteously, barking in anger, or displaying bored indifference. All bartering was to be done at the top of your lungs.
"Welcome to Diva, kid."
Aahz gestured expansively.
I said, what do you think?
It's loud, I observed.
What?
I said, it's loud, I shouted.
Oh, well, it's a bit livelier than your average farmer's market or fisherman's wharf, but there are noisier places to be.
I was about to respond when a passerby careened into me. He or she had eyes spaced all around his head and fur-covered tentacles instead of arms. It said, waving a tentacle as it continued on its way. Aahz?
Yeah?
It just occurred to me, what language do they speak on Diva?
Well, don't worry about it, kid. They speak all languages. I said they speak all languages here. No DeVille that's been hatched would let a cell get away just because they couldn't speak the right tongue. Just drop a few sentences on them in Clodish and they'll adapt fast enough.
Okay, Aahz. Now that we're here, where do we go first? There was no answer. I tore my eyes away from the bazaar and glanced at my partner. He was standing motionless, sniffing the air. Aahz?
Hey, kid, do you smell that?
He asked eagerly. I sniffed the air.
What?
Yeah, I gagged.
What died? Come on, kid, follow me.
He plunged off into the crowd, leaving me little choice but to trail after him. Hands plucked at our sleeves as we passed, and various DeVilles leaned out of their stalls and tents to call us as we passed, but Aahz didn't slacken his pace. I couldn't get a clear look at any of the displays as we passed. Keeping up with Aahz demanded most of my concentration. One tent, however, did catch my eye. Look, Aahz, I cried.
What?
It's raining in that tent. Narrator's note, that sounds like the tiny tea tent at Glastonbury. Yeah, in my 20s and 30s, I went to Glastonbury multiple times, which, when it was still good, before it got really commercialised, and yeah, the Millennium did that, I guess, but that was the last one I enjoyed, was 2001, or was it 2000? I don't know, but yeah, it's like one of my favourite performances there was the Foo Fighters, and they came on after the Bare Naked Ladies. That was a really, really good lineup for those two to be there. Seeing Skunk and Nancy there was absolutely wild. You know, I'm a bit of a muso. I love my music, and Glastonbury itself was phenomenal. But I'll get back to the point. So Glastonbury is well known for its amazing music lineups, well, it used to be. But also for the mud. For some reason, they always held it at the end of June. At the end of June, it used to always be a light downpour after downpour after downpour, because honestly, weather systems are dictated by the fact that the British want to watch Wimbledon, and so therefore it has to rain continuously through June and until the very first light dregs of July. But yeah, the thing that really just made everything so much better when you're cold and you're wet and you're covered in mud and you've walked all the way from the campsite down to the kind of like concessions, all that sort of thing. You're freezing cold, you go into the tiny tea tent. The tiny tea tent, the little haven of warmth and wonderfulness, of kettles and teas and smells and savours, all absolutely gorgeous. And you'd have just a cup of green tea. No, Annette, just a cup of green. That's all I wanted, just a cup of green tea, and just being sat there. And it was so cosy. I was like, Every time I did this, also the hot spicy cider bus, like at 5 o'clock in the morning, is just, yeah, you had to experience it. And if you have, please let me know. And also the hot garlic bread stall, which they used to have butter in a big vat, and they used to pour it down toasted French sticks. Oh, gorgeous. But let's get back to the tiny tea tent. I digress. So you're nice and cosy. You got to imagine this, as I said, like the hot garlic would make you cosy, the hot and spicy cider makes you cosy, and the green tea makes you cosy. All different concessions, but the tiny tea tent was the only one that was actually inside. The other two was like those kind of like vending cart sort of things. You sat there and you're like finally getting warm, and everybody's like happy and joyful, and the tiny tea tent is so lovely. It's right in the centre. It's a tiny little tea tent, as the name would suggest, and you're sitting there and you're like nursing your cup of tea, and it's like, oh, it's lovely. Every time you've come, like all the years before, it's always been so cosy. It's like, But that's the point. Because it has been there for years and years and years. The tiny tea tent. Tents aren't infallible, really, are they? And this one time, the last time, was when the rain was absolutely hooning it down. It was throwing it down. It was coming down with a vengeance, going, I got Wimbledon, now I shall get you. And you sat there and you're like, it's all nice and cozy. But little did you realise that the scene was starting to give. And give. And then you started to notice a drip, drip, drip start coming down from a very, very big sag in the middle where the water had collected. But it was too late, because when you did actually notice this, the rip had actually torn right away along the whole seam of the tiny tea tent, and literally everything poured through. The rain came through, the collected rain came through, my tears and blood and sweat came through. Well, not the blood, but just being dramatic, you know. Yeah. It was a fitting end to Glastonbury that year. It was a fitting end to my Glastonbury career. Festivals, full stop, really. But yeah, those were the days. Oh, so much fun. Anyway, I digress. So that's when the rain was in the tent. So I know what that's like. Right. Look, Aahz, I cried.
What?
It's raining in that tent. As if in an answer to my words, a boom of thunder and a crackle of lightning erupted from the display. Now it was no, just like that.
Yeah, so?
Aahz dismissed it with a glance. What are they selling? Rain?
No. Where the control devices, they're scattered through the whole bazaar instead of hanging together in one section. Something about the devices interfering with each other.
Are all the displays that spectacular?
That is not spectacular, kid. They used to do tornadoes until the other booths complained and they had to limit their demonstrations to the tame stuff. Now, hurry up!
Where are we going anyway, Aahz? And what is that smell? The repulsive aroma was getting noticeably stronger.
That, I said that,
proclaimed Aahz, coming to a halt in front of a dome-shaped tent,
is the smell of pervish cooking.
Food? We came all this way so you could have a meal.
First things first, kid. I haven't had a decent meal since Garkin called me out of the middle of a party and stranded me in your idiot dimension.
But we're supposed to be looking for something to use against Ishtavan.
Relax, kid. I haggle better on a full stomach. Just wait here. I won't be long.
Wait here? Can't I go in with you?
I don't think you'd like it, kid. To anyone, I said to anyone who wasn't born on Perv, the food looks even worse than it smells.
I found that hard to believe, but pursued the argument gamely. I'm not all that weak-stomached, you know. When I was living in the woods, I ate some pretty weird things myself.
I'll tell you, kid, the main problem with pervish food is keeping the goo from calling out of the bowl while you're eating it.
I'll wait here, I decided.
Good. Like I say, I won't be long. You can watch the dragons until I get back.
Dragons, I said, but he had already disappeared through the tent flap. I turned slowly and looked at the display behind me. Dragons! There was an enormous stall stocked with dragons not 15 feet from where I was standing. Most of the beasts were tethered at the back wall, which kept me from seeing them as we approached, but upon direct viewing there was no doubt they were indeed dragons. Curiosity made me drift over to join the small crowd in front of the stall. The stench was overwhelming, but after a whiff of pervish cooking it seemed almost pleasant. I'd never seen a dragon before, but the specimens in the stall lived up to the expectations of my daydreams. They were huge, easily 10 or 15 feet high at the shoulder and a full 30 foot long. Their necks were long and serpentine, and their clawed feet dug great gouges in the ground as they shifted their weight nervously. I was surprised to see how many varieties there were. It never occurred to me that there might be more than one type of dragon, but here was living proof to the contrary. Besides the green dragons I'd always envisioned, there were red, black, gold and blue dragons. There was even one that was mauve. Some were winged and some were not. Some had wide, massive jaws and others had narrow snouts. Some had eyes that were squinting and slanted, while others had huge, moon-like eyes that never seemed to blink. They had two things in common, however. They were all big, and they all looked thoroughly nasty. My attention was drawn to the Deville running the operation. He was the biggest Deville I had ever seen, fully 8 feet tall with arms like trees. It was difficult to say which was more fearsome in appearance, the dragons or their keeper. He brought one of the red dragons to the centre of the stall and released it with a flourish. The beast raised its head and surveyed the crowd with seething yellow eyes. The crowd fell back a few steps before that gaze. I seriously considered leaving. The Deville shouted a few words at the crowd in gibberish I couldn't understand, then picked up a sword from the rack by the wall. Fast as a cat, the dragon arched its neck and spat a stream of fire at its keeper. By some miracle, the flame parted as it hit the Deville and passed harmlessly on to either side of him. The keeper smiled and turned to shout a few more words at his audience, and as he did, the dragon leapt at him with murderous intent. The Deville dove to the ground and rolled out from under the attack as the beast landed with an impact that shook the tent. Narrators know it's not really a flex, really, is it, to shake a tent? Just saying. The dragon whirled, but the keeper was on his feet again, holding aloft a pendant before the beast's eyes. I didn't understand this move, but apparently the dragon did, for it cowered back on its haunches. The Deville pointed forcefully, and it slunk back to its place at the back of the stall. A small ripple of applause rippled through the crowd. Double ripples. Apparently they were impressed with the ferocity of the dragon's attack. Me, I was impressed by the pendant. The keeper acknowledged the applause and launched into another spiel of gibberish, this time punctuated by gestures and exclamations. I decided it was about time for me to go. Bleep! There was a tug at my sleeve. I looked around. There behind me was a small dragon. Well, he was about 4 feet high and 10 feet long, but after looking at the other dragons, he seemed small. He was green with big blue eyes and what appeared to be a drooping white moustache. For a split second, I was panicky, but that rapidly gave way to curiosity. He didn't look dangerous. He seemed quite content just standing there chewing on my sleeve. The beast was eating a piece of my sleeve. I looked down and confirmed that part of my shirt was indeed missing. Wait, said the dragon again, stretching his neck out for another mouthful. Go away, I said, and cuffed him before I realised what I was doing. It said, puzzled. I started to edge away. I was unsure what to do if he cut loose with a blast of fire and therefore eager to avoid it. It said, shuffling after me. Roared a voice behind me. I spun and found myself looking at a hairy stomach. I followed it up, way up, and saw the dragon keeper's face looming over me. I'm sorry, I apologised readily. I don't speak your language.
Oh, a clod,
the Deville boomed.
Well, the statement still stands. Pay up!
Pay up for what?
For the dragon. What do you think? We're giving away samples?
Bleep, said the dragon, pressing its head against my leg. There seems to be some mistake, I said hastily.
I'll say there is.
The Deville scowled.
And you're making it. We don't take kindly to shoplifters on Diva.
Bleep, said the dragon. Things were getting rapidly out of hand. If needed Aahz help or advice, it was now. I shot a desperate glance toward the tent he was in, hoping beyond hope to see him emerge. He wasn't there. In fact, the tent wasn't there. Gone. Vanished into thin air. And so had Aahz. Oh dear. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Where's Aahz gone? Goodness gracious. Has he got enough pocket money to pay for the little dragon? Will he keep the little dragon? I think that's quite cute, actually, having a little dragon as a pet. But then again, I have got my little dog and my other dog and my two cats. And yeah, they're kind of, they can be dragon-ish at times. No, they can't really. They don't spit fire. They don't have wings. They do have teeth, but they don't use them. So, yeah, I still think a pet dragon would be fun. I used to have an iguana, bearded dragon, horned lizard, cane toad. Yeah, 2 green water dragons. They were quite good. Yeah. And a skink. A leopard skink. They were quite cool. Yeah, I used to have a really big thing about lizards back in the day. Back when I was in my early 20s at my first house, you know. That's like, you know, when I bought my first home and I could do whatever I wanted. I had 2 massive tanks and I had rats as well, but I didn't feed the rats to the lizards because I just wasn't inclined that way, you know. But the lizards did get the crickets and locusts, which is always quite fun. Yeah, because crickets and locusts are evil, you know, especially when they're really massive ones. Yeah. It's locusts I used to have. Yeah, it was. So, lovely beans. If you're too hot, make sure to stay in the shade and hydrate to keep yourself nice and refreshed. If you're too cold, keep yourself wrapped up warm, nice hot drink. As you can see, when I was talking about dragons, they like to squeak their squeakers when you're trying to record. Yes. But most of all, most importantly, get lots of rest. Take care, petal. The squeaks are free.